All right, so welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today, we're going to be tackling something that I think everyone has experienced at some point or another. You know those just incredibly annoying computer glitches that make you want to just like chuck your laptop out the window?
Oh, yeah.
We've all been there.
Absolutely.
But today, instead of like tech rage, we're going for tech smarts. We're going to be, doing a deep dive today, diving into a Learn English podcast episode, believe it or not.
Okay.
To uncover some really interesting and honestly surprising insights about computer viruses.
You know what I think is so brilliant about this approach is how it uses this like really relatable scenario. You know, like someone's just struggling with their computer, keeps freezing up on them, and they use that to teach English vocabulary.
Yeah.
But what I find even more fascinating is that it's almost like hidden within those everyday phrases that we all use are some pretty important technical concepts.
I love that. So this English podcast is kind of like sneaking in some serious tech knowledge.
Exactly.
It's like learn about viruses undercover.
Yeah, totally.
So in this dialogue, it starts with someone's computer just acting up, right? It keeps freezing 3 times in one day. That sounds like a classic case of a virus to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a possibility. And, you know, it's important to remember that a computer virus isn't just some vague tech ailment, you know?
No.
It's actually like a piece of malicious software that's specifically designed to mess with your computer system.
Oh, okay.
You can think of it kind of like a virus infecting like a human body.
Okay, so it's not just like the computer's having a bad day.
No, not at all.
There's something actually going on in there.
Okay, it's like a targeted attack.
Okay, that analogy makes sense. But how does a computer virus actually, like, work? I mean, I know we all kind of throw that term around, but what's going on behind the scenes?
Well, just like a biological virus, right? It has different parts that do different things.
Yeah.
A computer virus also has these components that are designed to, like, replicate themselves, spread, and then ultimately cause damage. So some viruses might be, you know, specifically designed to steal your data. Like, that's their goal.
Oh, no.
Whereas others, you know, they might just be meant to slow down your computer or cause like those annoying pop-ups that we all get.
Yeah.
And one way that these viruses actually spread is through what the podcast calls infected files.
Ah, yes. Infected files. That phrase just still, like, sends shivers down my spine.
Right.
Can you kind of unpack that a little bit?
So imagine you have a file. It seems harmless, right? Like a document or a picture.
Right.
But now imagine that file has been like secretly tampered with, and now it carries this like hidden piece of malicious code.
Oh, gosh.
So that right there, that's an infected file. And when you open it or you interact with it in any way, you unknowingly unleash that virus into your system.
Oh, no.
And then it can, you know, wreak havoc.
So you just think you're opening like a normal picture, and then all of a sudden your computer's like throwing a tantrum.
And that's how it can spread from one computer to another, kind of like a digital contagion.
Okay, yikes. The podcast also mentions that this infected computer was shutting down on its own. Is that like another telltale sign that maybe you have a virus?
Yeah, it definitely can be. I mean, while there could be other reasons for those like unexpected shutdowns, a virus that's disrupting your system processes can definitely lead to those kinds of issues. And unfortunately, the damage doesn't just stop there, right?
Right.
Because these infected files can actually replicate themselves and spread that virus even further, you know, potentially corrupting more of your data or even spreading to other devices on your network. It's like this chain reaction of like digital chaos.
That is officially terrifying.
Right.
So how do we stop this digital plague in its tracks?
Right.
The English podcast, they suggest keeping your antivirus software up to date.
Absolutely. And this is where that, you know, seemingly simple phrase, not up to date, takes on a whole new meaning. You see, antivirus software, it's really your computer's first line of defense. It's constantly scanning for and battling those, you know, pesky digital invaders. But just like our own immune systems need those booster shots to stay effective against new viruses, your antivirus software, it needs those regular updates too.
So outdated antivirus software is basically like wearing a suit of armor, but with holes in it.
Yeah, exactly.
You might think you're protected,
right?
But you're actually leaving yourself wide open to attack.
Exactly. You're vulnerable. And those updates are crucial because hackers, you know, and those virus creators, they're constantly coming up with new ways to infiltrate your system. So your antivirus software needs those updates to recognize and neutralize those evolving threats. Otherwise, you're kind of like trying to fight a modern army, but with like medieval weapons.
Oh yeah, you're gonna lose.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not enough to just have antivirus software.
Right.
You gotta keep it fighting fit with those updates. But what about like different types of antivirus software? The podcast didn't really get into that, did it?
It didn't, and that's where things get really, really interesting. Because just like there are different types of viruses out there, there are different approaches to cybersecurity. So some antivirus programs, they focus on recognizing known threats. Think of it like a mugshot book, right? But for bad code.
Right.
They basically compare files to this database of known viruses, and they flag anything that looks suspicious.
That makes sense. But what about brand new viruses, like ones that haven't been cataloged yet? How do you catch those sneaky culprits?
That's where behavioral analysis comes in. So some antivirus programs, they're less about recognizing specific faces, right? And they're more about spotting suspicious behavior. So they monitor how programs act on your computer. They're looking for things like unusual file access or attempts to modify your system settings or even like communication with known malicious servers.
Oh, so it's like a digital detective. Looking for clues that something shady's going on. I like that.
Yeah.
But with all this talk of viruses and infected files, it's easy to forget that our computers are physical objects too.
Right.
And I remember the English podcast had like a funny bit about that.
Yeah. The classic advice, don't kick your computer.
Right.
And while it is played for laughs, it does remind us that physical care is important too. I mean, you wouldn't punch your smartphone in frustration, right?
Well, maybe not punch.
Yeah.
But I've definitely given my phone a good shake or two when it's acting up.
Oh, I'm sure we all have.
But you're right, like physical damage can make existing problems worse or even, create new ones. So like, what are some practical things that we can do to kind of keep our hardware happy?
Well, first off, proper ventilation is key. Computers generate heat, and if that heat can't escape, it can lead to overheating and component failure. So make sure those vents aren't blocked by, dust bunnies or crammed into a stuffy backpack.
Okay, so treat your computer like a delicate flower. Keep it cool and breezy. What else?
Regular cleaning is essential, both inside and out. Dust buildup can clog fans and cause overheating, while crumbs and spills can damage keyboards and other sensitive components. So a can of compressed air and a microfiber cloth can go a long way.
I'm already feeling guilty about the state of my keyboard. But, it's not just about physical care, is it?
No.
There's also, like, the emotional side of things.
Absolutely.
And the podcast really captured that, like, feeling of just frustration when your computer goes haywire.
We often overlook that emotional impact of technology problems, right? It's not just about inconvenience. It can really feel like a disruption to our work, our connections, even like our sense of control. And those feelings are completely valid.
Oh, totally. I have been there. Once my computer crashed right before a big deadline, and I lost hours of work. I may or may not have had a mini meltdown.
Right.
But you know what? Having a bit of knowledge about computer viruses and how to prevent them actually makes me feel a little less helpless.
That's a great point. Knowledge is power, especially in the digital world. Understanding the language of tech, knowing how to troubleshoot those basic issues, it can really empower you.
Yeah. It's like learning a secret code that unlocks a whole new level of understanding. And speaking of codes, I can't help but think back to that Learn English podcast.
Right.
It's amazing how something so seemingly simple can spark such a deep dive into the world of technology.
It's fascinating to me how language shapes our relationship with technology, right? The way we talk about computers, the phrases we use, they all reflect our experiences, our frustrations, even our humor.
Yeah, I like the phrase corrupt file. It's almost like a metaphor for how technology can sometimes feel like it's working against us.
Totally.
But by understanding these terms, these concepts, we can start to feel more in control.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about viruses and infected files and even how to give our computers a little TLC.
Right.
But what does all of this mean for, you, the listener?
Yeah.
What's the big takeaway from this deep dive?
Here's where it gets really interesting. This English podcast with its, seemingly simple dialogue about a frozen computer has actually given us a crash course in digital literacy. By understanding the language of computer problems and those basic concepts behind them, you're better equipped to kind of navigate the digital world safely and effectively.
It's like having a secret decoder ring for the digital age.
Exactly.
And just like learning any new language.
Yeah.
The more you practice, the more fluent you become.
Right.
So, dear listener, what can you do today to protect yourself from those pesky viruses?
Well, first things first, make sure that antivirus software is up to date.
Okay.
And don't just, set it and forget it.
Right.
Take some time to actually explore the different types of antivirus software that are available.
Yep.
Some offer more robust protection than others, and finding one that suits your needs is key.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Exactly.
And while antivirus software is like a great first line of defense, there are other steps you can take to, bolster your digital security.
Absolutely.
What else can our listeners do to stay ahead of the curve?
One word: backups.
Backups, okay.
Imagine the peace of mind knowing that even if a virus does manage to, wreak havoc,
Yeah.
you have a copy of your important files safely stored somewhere else.
Yeah,
Regular backups are like an insurance policy for your digital life.
absolutely.
You gotta have that.
Speaking of insurance, what about those tricky situations where you're not sure if something is a virus or not?
Right.
What are some red flags to watch out for?
Okay, well, be wary of unexpected pop-ups, especially those that are urging you to download something or provide personal information.
Oh, yeah.
Also, pay attention to your computer's performance.
Okay.
If it suddenly becomes sluggish or programs start crashing for no apparent reason, it could be a sign that something's amiss.
Oh, okay.
And always be cautious about clicking links or opening attachments from, unknown senders.
Yeah, don't do that.
That's classic phishing territory.
Yeah, for sure.
Be careful.
Oh, wait, those are some great tips. It's all about being proactive and staying informed.
Right.
But what if, despite our best efforts, we do encounter a problem that, we just can't solve on our own?
Yeah.
Is it okay to admit defeat and call in the experts?
Absolutely. There's no shame in seeking professional help.
Yeah.
Just like, you wouldn't try to perform surgery on yourself.
Right.
Sometimes it's best to leave those complex computer issues to the pros.
Totally. They have the tools and the expertise to diagnose and fix those really tricky tech troubles.
Right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
While technology can be frustrating at times, it's also an incredible tool that can enrich our lives in countless ways.
It really can.
It really can.
And by taking some basic precautions, by educating ourselves about, potential risks and solutions, we can minimize those frustrations and harness the power of technology for good.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of computer viruses.
Yeah, this was fun.
Remember, knowledge is power.
Always.
So stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe in that digital world.
Be safe out there.
So we've talked about viruses, infected files, even how to give our computers a little TLC. But what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Right.
What's the big takeaway from this deep dive?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. This English podcast, with its seemingly simple dialogue about a frozen computer, it's actually given us a crash course in digital literacy. By understanding the language of computer problems and the basic concepts behind them, you're better equipped to navigate the digital world safely and effectively.
It's like having a secret decoder ring
Totally.
for the digital age. And just like learning any new language, the more you practice,
Right.
the more fluent you become. So dear listener, what can you do today to protect yourself from those pesky viruses?
Well, first things first, make sure that antivirus software is up to date. And don't just set it and forget it. Take some time to explore the different types of antivirus software that are available. Some offer more robust protection than others, and finding one that suits your needs is key.
Right, it's not one size fits all.
No.
And while antivirus software is a great first line of defense,
Right.
there are other steps you can take to bolster your digital security. What else can our listeners do to kind of stay ahead of the curve?
One word.
Backups.
Backups, okay. Imagine the peace of mind knowing that even if a virus does manage to wreak havoc, you have a copy of all of your important files safely stored somewhere else.
Right.
Regular backups are like an insurance policy for your digital life.
Absolutely. Speaking of insurance, what about those tricky situations where you're not sure if something is a virus or not?
Right.
What are some red flags to watch out for?
Be wary of unexpected pop-ups, especially those urging you to download something or provide personal information.
Oh, yeah.
Also, pay attention to your computer's performance. If it suddenly becomes sluggish or programs start crashing for no apparent reason, that could be a sign that something's amiss. And always be cautious about clicking links or opening attachments from unknown senders.
Yeah, don't do that.
Classic phishing territory.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Be careful.
Those are some great tips. It's all about being proactive and staying informed.
Absolutely.
But what if, despite our best efforts, we do encounter a problem we can't solve on our own?
Right.
Is it okay to admit defeat and call in the experts?
Absolutely. There's no shame in seeking professional help. Just like, you wouldn't try to perform surgery on yourself.
Right.
Sometimes it's best to leave complex computer issues to the pros.
Exactly. They have the tools and the expertise to diagnose and fix those really tricky tech troubles. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I want to leave you with a final thought. While technology can be frustrating at times, it's also an incredible tool that can enrich our lives in countless ways.
Absolutely, it can.
And by taking some basic precautions, by educating ourselves about potential risks and solutions, we can minimize those frustrations and harness the power of technology for good.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. Aristotone, you're joining us on this journey into the world of computer viruses.
Yeah.
Remember, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe in the digital world.
Be safe out there, everyone.